Morning all. Okay, let's have a look at another crunch final round game, this time between Poland and USA. On board one we have two players over 2700. GM Wojtaszek from Poland 2718 versus Nakamura from the USA 2778. Okay, d4 and Naka plays d5, and after c4 Naka plays the Queen's Gambit accepted. D takes c4. Okay, and White plays the aggressive e4 move, which not only tries to collect the pawn quickly, but that centre is more ambitious than, say, playing e3, which is also another move played here, which supports d4. So this e3 is also quite popular, but e4, okay, and we have a kind of transposition now into what looks like a variation of the Alekhine defense. Black plays knight f6, after e5 knight d5, and like in the Alekhine defense, this knight's travelling all the way to the queen's side now, knight b6. Okay, bishop d3, black cannot take on d4 because of the bishop b5 check, exposing queen to attack. Anything here, then there's queen takes d4. So in this position, okay, White has these pawns. Are they a strength or a liability? Knight c6, which does rule out the potential later of either c6 or c5, which is sometimes useful. c5 to try and undermine the whole structure, or c6 just to reinforce the blockade square. So knight c6 is quite committal there. Bishop e3, and again we have the recurring tactic, of course, of bishop b5 check, indirectly protecting the pawn. g6, and now after knight c3 we see knight b4, and it looks as though black is interested in this blockade on d5. White now plays quite a challenging move for that blockade, bishop e4, putting pressure on d5, and now Naka reinforces the d5 blockade square with c6, knight f3, and now knight 4 to d5, and it looks like a fairly okay position here. If you look at black's bishops, this one's quite free on this diagonal, and this one could be useful for undermining e5 later. White is cautious about not allowing knight takes e3, it seems, from his next move, bishop d2. Black plays bishop g7, and now both sides castle. Rook e1, and now quite a committal decision from Naka. We noted earlier that c5 could undermine White's centre. This pawn chain, how can it be undermined if it's not from c5? It could be from f6, but f6 has some downsides, like the diagonal. King safety is a bit less with two pawns instead of the usual three. This is always a problem borrowing from one of the kingside pawns around the castle king. I just want to check, therefore, this next move, if engines like it or not. Here White was slightly better, and then I'll just move this up a bit. We see recommendations like knight c3 or knight c4, but f6, yeah, there's a bit of an evaluation shift after f6. It's a move which carries potential benefits, of course, on the f file and to undermine e5, but there are some major downsides of it as well. Okay, so White is content here just to play h3. Now we see king h8, and now here White takes on d5, and note that this bishop has got a useful diagonal here potentially on these squares. For example, on b4 it could be useful on that diagonal. On a5 that could be a useful pin. Now Naka actually doesn't replace the blockade on d5 with the other knights here, which is quite interesting. He plays actually c takes d5, evicting the bishop from e4. So what would be the problem with knight takes d5? Let's just check what the preferred from an engine point of view is here. Knight d5 seems, yes, you would need to sort of, it's debatable which seems stronger at this depth. Probably needs to run this for a few minutes. What would be an example downside though of knight takes d5? Queen b3. I suppose this bishop's tied down to b7 here. If we follow this through, it seems somehow white has an advantage with nagging pressure here in any case. So c takes d5 evicts the bishop from e4 anyway. Okay, and now we see knight c4. So threatening knight takes b2, that's protected here with bishop c3. And now knight a5. So Naka has got this potential useful c4 square to play with later, but he's also committed with f6, which doesn't do much for his king safety, potentially. White plays e takes f6, and now we see some unfortunate consequences. If black captures with a piece, then e5 is very nice for a knight, and this bishop's very nice on that diagonal supporting e5 as well. So black covers up e5 with a pawn, and it looks a little bit risky, this structure now, even though there's some restoration for the free pawns. It looks as though with the next move, bishop b4, Neka is already looking in big trouble here. He cannot play the simple move rook e8 because then it would seem just taking on a5. Now given he cannot play rook e8 here, it looks as though white has a lot of trump cards now after rook f7. Potential control of the e-file, very nice bishop over here. Black's got a hemmed in bishop. If he ever plays f5, then e5 will be terribly weak, as well as g5. So white has the trump cards, and white actually plays a move which seems to threaten to devastate totally black's king position. I wonder if you can spot it here, what white plays in this position. If I give you 10 seconds starting from now. Okay, knight h4. It seems as a general pattern when we look at grandmaster games, when there's a trump card which has been accumulated, then you see more of a justification for a brutal onslaught on the king. Here the trump cards, at least two, this e-file possession, this bishop, this offside knight, this development which is the rooks are not going to connect anytime soon here, these poor rooks. Okay, Naka is now faced with this unpleasant idea of knight takes g6. What does he do about knight takes g6 and bishop g6? Let's give an example here. Just throw in a token move. Right, so say bishop d7, knight g6 is devastating. Takes bishop g6, immediate threat, queen h5 check, and remember the bishop's guarding f8, so there's going to be less of an escape exit for the king. If the rook, where does the rook move here? You can make the king on a silly move like that. But this is just a devastating position. If black has to play this, then this is very bad. +10 we're talking about. So something really has to be done, and it seems like this might be the only move, f5, which is not a move black really wants to do. It's weakness provocation now. This e5 is really nice for white on this file, and of course the bishop has been hemmed in as well by black being prompted to play this move. So we just see a simple retreat now, knight f3 coming back to the centre. The damage was done. Bishop blocked in, nice e5 square to play with, immediate knight e5 threat. That's contested now, knight c6, bishop a3. And you might wonder here, well, what about the d4 pawn? I think we don't need to turn on an engine for this. After takes, we can use the e file, I think, with bishop b5, which threatens queen d4 and rook e8. It would seem to be a crushing position taking here. Let's just make sure of that as tactical check, though. Bishop b5 would seem to be the refutation. Nope. No, I'm glad I did a tactical check, because I think there might be bishop f2. Bishop b5, there's bishop f2 here. And queen b6. It's always good to check with an engine, especially in the morning. That's the moral of this story. So after why cannot black take on d4? In fact, that's given us one of the better moves. Knight takes d4 is one of the better moves available for black technically. Intriguing. So bishop b5 would seem to fell to bishop f2. If white plays bishop f1, then bishop b6, and this doesn't seem that bad for black. Although white's advantage seems to be getting pronounced in this variation in any case, to almost the pawn. But yeah, that's instructive. Bishop b5, bishop takes f2 check. And if white, well, that's not good. Just bishop takes e1. If king h1. So forget that. Okay, so knight takes d4 was actually an interesting move. So in the game, bishop d7 was played. And white again doesn't mind about d4. He plays queen b3. He's on d5 now. That weakness of the last move, kind of not protecting d5 here. So the bishop gets out of the way of the queen to protect d5, and maybe we do have this potential knight d4 coming up. But now it certainly looks like a major pin now with bishop b5 now against e8. So knight takes d4. Surely knight takes d4 now, and that's fine. There's rook e8 there. So rook c7. White positionally plays this with emphasizing control over the e5 square now. He simply takes on c6. He's just marking out the e5 square. After bishop takes c6, he doesn't immediately go into e5 with the knight though. He prepares the double rooks, which would be very, very nice. Lots of threats like rook e8 potentially. Rook c8 looks awkward. Looks awkward. And the weakness of the last move is used here. It's not contesting e7. White goes into e7 straight off the bat now. Queen b6. Queen e3, shifting gear on the king side, introducing lots of possibilities, as well as of course trebling on the e file. Rook e8, rook e1, trebling. Threatening actually rook e8 now, definitely, and queen e8 pick up lots of pieces. Rook takes e7. Okay, but we need to check this out now. White played bishop takes e7. I do wonder, it looks as though maybe, you know, queen e7 is playable even though there's rook e8. I would suspect queen e7 is playable, and technically it looks as though on this brief analysis it might actually be the stronger move. So rook e8 is not a trap really. Just take and mop up loads and loads of pieces here for the queen. That's unpleasant. So queen e7 was possible, but in fact bishop takes e7 was played. And with this, of course, queen g5 can be used for bishop f6 to wrench out the protection of Naka's king. Queen c7, bishop queen g5, king g8, and we see bishop f6 just trying to leave white with the better knight versus bishop, because the pawns are on light squares here like this one, and just get rid of black's bishop pair is a priority. Black avoids that with bishop f8. Now we see knight e5, and the problem with bishop f8 though is that now knight g6 is a menace of a threat. The knight's pinned for the moment with rook e8, so if knight g6, well, there's rook takes e8 is mate actually. That's mate because the queen's on h2. So that's definitely pinning the knight here. Rook e3 unpinning the knight and maybe threatening now knight takes g6 because, you know, if takes, it looks unpleasant. If it's not mating, it's winning the rook potentially, or something else going on. There is tactical pressure on g6 here. So black plays now bishop g7, relinquishing the bishop pair and leaving white with a horrendous knight versus that bishop. So bishop takes g7, and now more pressure on g6 with rook g3, renewing again this tactical idea, just knight takes g6, smashing up black's king. Necker tries bishop d7, and it really does seem tempting here to play knight takes g6. I wonder, knight takes g6 here. Is rook e1 a powerful counter-attack? Let's just check this out. Does it still work here? Knight takes g6, check, hg, and black king can safely walk out, I think, because the queen is pinning that rook, so it's going to be like just perpetual. So what was played was actually far stronger in this position. h4, which not only introduces h5 and more pressure on g6, but the idea of h6 check as well is dangerous. Queen d8, the avoidance of queen exchange with queen f4, rook f8, and now the dangerous h5. So white's really got this grip on the position, this knight on e5. Actually, I remember recently a Tartakower quote saying, one of his many quotes, he was saying about a knight on e5. Once you get a knight on e5, it's like a winning attack. And I didn't really appreciate at the time that quotation, but the knight on e5 is like the Pillsbury bind, you know, knight on e5. I thought he had that in mind, but you see here the power of the knight on e5 striking at these sensitive squares, and it's uncontestable with this light square bishop blocked in by its own pawn. It's just a huge advantage, this position. And white doesn't just have the option of hg. Of course, this h6 is very dangerous, and it's actually, after bishop e8, h6 is actually made use of here. King g8, and now, okay, white plays rook c3. He switches infiltration to the queen side. If needed, he can play a move maybe like queen c1 to force a rook infiltration to g7. That is a goal-hanging pawn, fawn pawn, Thorn, fawn, pawn, on h6 now, which is very dangerous. So queen d6. Now not queen c1 here, which might be strong, but actually rook c8 for the moment. After bishop f7, now we see queen c1, and white doesn't clearly mind the queen's coming off. It would look mighty unpleasant to take the rooks here. Let's just check this out. So taking queen f8, queen b7 looks terribly unpleasant. It's on f7. Black can't take here because of f7. It's going to drop this pawn, it's going to drop other pawns. It's nasty. Even with that, let's not bother checking that any further. So bishop e6 trying to evict the rook. Rook c7, and the goal hanging pawn is made use of for rook g7 here. f4. And white is not in a rush to play a move like rook g7 check. He just keeps that as an available option. He just munches a pawn on the queen side now. Rook takes b7, which also introduces queen c7 now, just to get rid of the queens. Necker plays now g5, and I think there's a wealth of options for white actually in this position. I think queen c7 is very strong, as well as what was played. Just if we look at this must be about +3 or 4, I guess. It's about more than 4, +4. Queen c5, queen c2. I think lots of moves just win here. Many moves just win. white mopped up another pawn and now goes in with queen c7. So after takes, now Naka resigns here. It's really hopeless position. Of course, these pawns, black's tied down. Let's give an example though of rook b8, just to show the full horror technically. Black resigned here, so say rook b8. Let's go with rook e7 to dislodge the bishop, and now this check. Now if king h8, knight f7 is mating, so here is winning the bishop, for example. No need to go any further. Okay. So that was the board 1 encounter, but other games were going better than that, and I think let's have a look at another key game from this match soon, maybe later today or tomorrow. But for the moment, let's review in overview and summary this key game on board 1. So d4, the Polish number 1, Queen's Gambit accepted, sort of transposing into some variation I'd expect of the Alekhine defense. So white using that bishop b5 to indirectly support d4 here. g6, it looks more logical than e6, which would be hemming in that bishop, so keeping that bishop free. This looks as though it didn't matter about the c-pawn being temporarily blocked. It's going to be used for supporting the d5 outpost square. So I believe personally that black had a good position and it started to go horribly bad. Stemming, I think the stem of the illness of black's position was actually f6. That's my personal opinion. I don't know about you guys, but f6 is very tempting, but maybe there's other ways of playing this position. So for example, knight takes c3. Let's go with knight c4, which doesn't seem to do that much for a moment. Just get a pretty knight. See, black can potentially play on the queen side here. This kind of continuation, you know, if black's king comes under an onslaught, it seems at least this bishop is doing a fine job in this kind of position. But anyway, it looks as though white can carve out an advantage even this engine line. So I don't know. But f6, okay, it was trying for some counterplay clearly and to undermine white's centre. The basis for it looks absolutely fine. So h3, king h8. We saw knight takes d5, bishop d3. Now knight c4, bishop c3, knight a5. This is like a bit of a tactical liability, it turns out now, and emphasised by white playing e takes f6, because that pressure on a5 is noted now in these variations after bishop b4, that black cannot play rook e8 because of rook takes e8 and bishop takes a5. So now this horrible move, very powerful, hemming in basically. It's a positional move in two respects, hemming in the bishop and giving white marking out e5 more, just to play knight h4. Horribly dangerous threat of knight takes g6 for the queen coming in crudely to h5 on bishop g6. This is a terrible concession for black to have to make f5. Having done its damage, the knight's also attacked, by the way. It just returns back. And now I thought that this variation was just refuted with bishop b5, and thankfully I engine checked here that knight d4 is not possible. In fact, it might be one of black's viable moves here to bishop d7 in an otherwise very difficult position to contest the e file and other stuff. But this positional transaction is on the cards now of bishop b5 to mark out e5 even more, and to hem in this bishop in black's own structure here, own light square structure. So bishop e8, and now bishop b5, the positional transaction here for bishop takes c6. So white is improving his grip on the position with every move virtually, and now he goes again for black's king safety, dipping into black's king safety to again achieve contribute to positional goals, on this occasion to get rid of black's bishop pair and to further mark out the dark squares even more and amplify the effect of a knight sitting on e5, which Tartko, a quotation, has said, if you get a knight on e5, the attack plays itself. Here the knight is not only on e5, it starts to be fairly uncontestable soon after black opts for this trade of bishops. This is a very instructive position, and when we say instructive, like the most instructive games of chess, if you look at them, they're very instructive because there's often a strategic blunder on one side which makes it more clearly instructive to see a blunder and how that's exploited, not in a very evenly matched, like tense struggle which ends in a draw. They don't make for such instructive games as positions like this where there's a clear positional advantage, the bishop being hemmed in by its own pawns, white having this attack which does kind of play itself. And unfortunately as well, there's the option of h6, of course, even if white has also got the flexibility to come over the queen side. So the torture never ends here in this position. The queen can't go check, it's protecting c1 here. Okay, so h5, installing now this form pawn, this goal hanging pawn, and now infiltrating on the queen side, rook c3, introducing many threats like queen c1, rook c8. Rook c8 immediately played here. It's just looking a bit horrendous. If black played bishop f7, I guess other things are quite easily refutable if we did check out something else, because of this horrendous knight. Tactically it looks like a monstrous knight. Bishop d7, just knight takes d7 here. Look at that. So if queen takes, then there's rook takes f8 is mates because of that goal hanging pawn, and if queen takes d7, then rook c7 here. So check, and queen c7, this infiltration on the 7th rank, facilitated by that goal hanging pawn as well. It's just absolutely positionally devastating for black here. Queen c1, rook c7, and just mopping up black's queen side at leisure here. You might think, sorry, here I've just noted that rook c8 would seem to be on the cards here. Let's also check why rook c8 was not playable. Maybe one problem immediately actually that comes into mind is queen takes f4. That probably is the reason why rook c8 is not that attractive. Queen takes f4 is a move, or rook g7. Okay, and in the game, okay, we see that pawn being protected, and queen c2 then is an engine suggestion, just eyeing h7, but no, rook takes a7. And here again, okay, let's again review why rook c8 in this position didn't work. Rook g7 check, and if here, then there's a beautiful queen takes c8 and knight f7 mating. It just shows this is just too much. This knight on e5 and this pawn on h6 really spells tactical disaster in so many ways which you couldn't even imagine in this position. So rook c8, and if king f8 out of interest, now here queen b1 would be good, just eyeing h7, just getting out of the way. Okay, so really it's just all over tactically. Naka tries G4. Then we get this Queen C7. And I think it's around here that Naka kind of resigned. Okay, an instructive game. But let's have a look. I'm not going to say the match result just yet. Let's have a look at another key game from this Poland versus USA match. Comments or questions on YouTube. Thanks very much.